Hello, Donatella. I thank you, first of all, for allowing us to respond to you through a video chat from our last department meeting where you expressed concerns about a lawsuit against ASU dealing with uh, equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a challenge that was based on a law that um, doesn't allow blaming for past wrongs against another group. So um, here are my concerns. We are making good progress as a department here in the School of Mathematical and Statistical Sciences. Uh, we are working on making the questions that are asked in our homework systems more equitable by inclusion of diverse names, inclusion of diverse um, gender and sexual orientations, and working in a way that is more inclusive. Additionally, we're working in ways of teaching that address the whole student and with a desire to make our classrooms inclusive for all. That's what we're working on. We're not working on blaming anyone, but I have a few ideas from discussions I've had. First of all, I'd like to mention a recent article, and I in this message I've linked it to you. That was on CNN, and in that article by uh, Ian Barry, he makes mention of this intersectionality of being a Jewish person. And I am not Jewish, but I have had many rich discussions with my colleagues who are Jewish. And we have discussed how being Native American and being Jewish has many similarities as far as intersectionality. So here's an example is like Jewish people, some are religious Jews and some are not. Uh, and of those who are religious Jews, there are various aspects of Judaism that they follow. Some are more towards the traditional side, uh, and then there's others that are more progressive. Uh, Secondly, being Jewish also involves either identifying as a political Jew or not being a political Jew. Uh, and again, the political Jews favor the state of Israel and its importance in their identity. Um, Others, because of the dysphoria, they have a homeland where they're at, and they may not identify with Israel as being the homeland for them anymore. Language, there are those that speak Hebrew. Um, there are those who have learned Hebrew through trying to stay in touch with their culture, and there are those who don't. Uh, Also, Yiddish and the other forms of language that have been used within that community. Um, and then there are those who are ethnic Jews by birth, and those who aren't but identify as being a Jewish person because they have adopted the religion, they have adopted the culture. Um, so there's all these different types of Jewish people, right? And each one is individually different from the other based upon their intersectionality with other identities. And while that identity is not what intersectionality is about, that we talk about legally, it's about the structure. The way they identify affects the way the world identifies them, and the way the system either accepts them or does not accept them in a certain frame. Uh, Take, for instance, a person who is not of Jewish descent, but has adopted the customs of Judaism, oftentimes is not going to be accepted as being a Jewish person. And the same is true within the Native American community. Uh, to be officially, by the system set up by the US government, an official Native American, member of a Native American community, you need a blood quantum of 930 seconds. Uh, 1/32 above 1/4. Or at least you need more than 1/4. So that's what I'm listed as, is 9/32. So I qualify. And yet my children would be, had I had children, if I had children with anyone other than another Turtle Mountain Chippewa member, uh, they would be half of that. You do the math. Uh, but about a quarter. And they would not qualify as being an enrolled member. They would not be able to enroll in the tribe. They would not be identified as a Turtle Mountain Chippewa or as a Native American. Um, and so that's sort of the physical structural side of being a Native American. And yet my cousins who do have children, they teach them the culture. They teach them, they identify themselves as Native Americans, as Turtle Mountain Chippewa. They're connected to that lineage, and yet structurally they're not. There's also, within the Native American community, there is a spiritual practices by tribes, and there's sort of this pan-Indian thing where many will adopt, say, the sweat lodge of the Lakota, because that is a cultural ceremony that has continued. I was trained in the ways of the Northern Cheyenne and the Mandan Hidatsus, slightly different ways of doing a sweat lodge. So that's from where I come from. That's how things are done. In the Southwest, I know the Navajo have a way. It's more an individual way of doing a sweat. So there's various ways of doing that. So that's the religious practice. That's a difference. And there have been times when the U.S. government structurally has outlawed Native American religious practices, such as the ghost dance and other expressions of religious practice. Um, and so within the Native American community, it's not one large community. It's a community of various tribes, various identities. And again, while intersectionality is not about identity, it is about the structure and the oppression. Uh, Identity that we have is the identity sometimes that we will receive from the outside, and whether or not we're being receiving uh, either privilege or oppression. So that, to me, excuse me, to me that's an important part. Another point I wanted to make is we can, I think, skirt a lot of these legal issues by our use of language. And the English language is such that one word does not always mean one thing. Sometimes to describe something, we need multiple words, or multiple words give a slightly different nuances. Take, for instance, intersectionality. Academically, people are pinning down and saying that has a particular meaning, while other people will pick it up and possibly give it other meanings. I use other words to describe some of these issues of intersectionality, overlapping, um, confluence. So we can talk about this as it's what is about is I can't get past the word, using the word identity, but the identity, uh, the overlapping identities that occur, um, that have an effect on us structurally because of how we're viewed from the outside world. How we view ourselves from the inside world does affect us. It affects the way we take action in this world. So our personal identity affects our action in the world. The identity that the outside world sees us having creates another effect. And some individually, how other individuals may react to us, but also how the whole system interacts with us. And while there is this academically, we're talking intersectionality is just about the structural look at things, all of this also is involved. So there was Jennifer Nash wrote an article about being criticizing or being a critic, and in that she talked about killing a word. That there's a certain, because they become buzzwords, and so they say, okay, let's stop using that word. Um, and at this annual meeting of this group, they decided to kill the use of the word intersectionality. Well, you can't kill a word. A word's going to get used how it's going to get used. Uh, Things like the word woke. What does that mean? To me, it's someone who woke up, is awake to what's going on, and yet there are people who see that word, and that's, to them that means something that people who uh, have a different view of the world than them, and that's all they see. But they don't see the action part of it, of being someone who is aware of what's going on. Uh, so anyway, I don't want to go too much further, but I believe as we continue to look at intersectionality, its approach, that we do have these overlapping um, areas of concern. We have uh, gender, we have sexual orientation, we have ethnicity, we have language, we have uh, levels of education. We stratify upon that. Levels, how many years someone's been serving. And so we have all of these interacting in ways that structurally can lead to oppression or at least inequalities. Uh, and if we address those without having to blame others, and again, they happened before a reason, so somebody did this, but we don't have to look to the blame. Now, one thing I would like to mention is this a teaching. Uh, if somebody has shot you with an arrow, it goes into your heart, doesn't kill you, what's the important thing? Is it important to know who shot that arrow? Is it important to know what kind of wood this arrow is made out of? Is it important to know who was the maker of the arrow? Then maybe you'll be able to sue them. No, it's important to get that arrow out and to get that area healing, right? Get the arrow out. Otherwise, you're just going to die worrying about who did what and this and that are unimportant things. So, as far as inequality, the important thing is to take action to alleviate the inequality, not to look to the past, although that, part of the problem of inequality is its past actions that are continuing to occur. And yet, if that's what we stick on and we want to blame uh, those of the past, are we going to be able to take action to create a future where equality is the norm and inequality has gone away? That's the day I work for. And we will only get there if we see people as individuals. And that's taking the intersectionality lens. We start to see people as individuals, as each person, not a Native American. A Native American, well, that's a person that is of Chippewa descent, that has Métis, is French. Oh, his father's also Saxon. A person, we see the many identities a person has, and then integrate that structurally into how we treat people. It's a big call, but it's the only thing that's going to work. Not to see these monolithic groups and then everybody in those groups is the same. That's one structural look. The structural look we need to see is that everybody, every individual is members of multiple groups. But okay, I get you. There's some that are members of just a single group. It's fine. But I'll bet you there's not, because there are male and female. There are people of the third gender, of non-binary. There are uh, sexual orientations as well. There are various religions. I'll bet you cannot find two people in this world who share all the same identical group memberships. Let's call it that way. There will be a difference between any of them. I challenge you. I challenge anybody. Show me the two people who are identical in everything.